Black Beauty by Anna Sewell. Read by Anne-Lise Kadri. Chapter 25. Reuben Smith. I must now say a little about Reuben Smith, who was left in charge of the stables when York went to London. No one more thoroughly understood his business than he did, and when he was all right, there could not be a more faithful or valuable man. He was gentle and very clever in his management of horses, and could doctor them almost as well as a farrier, for he had lived 2 years with a veterinary surgeon. He was a first-rate driver, and could take a 4 in hand or a tandem as easy as a pair. He was a handsome man, a good scholar, and had very pleasant manners. I believe everybody liked him, certainly the horses did. The only wonder was that he should be in an under situation, and not in the place of the head coachman like York. But he had one great fault, the love of drink. He was not like some men, always at it. He used to keep steady for weeks or months together, but then he would break out and have a bout of it, as York called it, and be a disgrace to himself, a terror to his wife, and a nuisance to all who had to do with him. He was, however, so useful that 2 or 3 times York had hushed the matter up and kept it from the Earl's knowledge. But one night, when Reuben had to drive a party home from a hall, he was so drunk that he could not hold the reins, and a gentleman of the party had to mount the box and drive the ladies home. Of course this could not be hidden. Reuben was at once dismissed, and his poor wife and little children had to turn out of the pretty cottage by the park gate and go where they could. Old Max told me all this, for it happened a good while ago, but shortly before Ginger and I came, Smith had been taken back again. York had interceded for him with the Earl, who was very kind-hearted, and the man had promised faithfully that he would never taste another drop as long as he lived there. Smith had kept his promise so well that York thought he might be safely trusted to fill his place whilst he was away, and he was so clever and honest that no one else seemed so well fitted for it. It was now early in April, and the family was expected home sometime in May. The light brougham was to be fresh done up, and as Colonel Blantyre was obliged to return to his regiment, it was arranged that Smith should drive him to the town in it, and then ride back. For this purpose he took the saddle with him, and I was chosen for the journey. At the station the Colonel put some money into Smith's hand and bade him good-bye, saying, "Take care of your young mistress, Reuben, and don't let Black Auster be hacked about by any random young prig that wants to ride him. Keep him for the lady." We left the carriage at the maker's, and Smith drove me to the White Lion and ordered the ostler to feed me well and have me ready for him at 4 o'clock. A nail in one of my front shoes had started as I came along, but the ostler did not notice it till just about 4 o'clock. Smith did not come into the yard till 5, and then he said he should not leave till 6, as he had met with some old friends. The man then told him of the nail, and asked if he should have the shoe looked to. "No," said Smith, "that will be all right till we get home." He spoke in a very loud, off-hand way, and I thought it was very unlike him not to see about the shoe, as he was generally wonderfully particular about loose nails in our shoes. He came neither at 6, 7, nor 8, and it was nearly 9 o'clock before he called me, and then it was with a loud, rough voice. He seemed in a very bad temper, and abused the ostler, though I could not tell what for. The landlord stood at the door and said, "Have a care, Mr. Smith," but he answered angrily with an oath. And almost before he was out of the town, he began to gallop, frequently giving me a sharp cut with his whip, though I was going at full speed. The moon had not yet risen, and it was very dark. Having been recently mended, the roads were stony, and going over them at this pace made my shoe looser, so that when we were near the turnpike gate, it came off. If Smith had been in his right senses, he would have been sensible of something wrong in my pace, but he was too madly drunk to notice anything. Beyond the turnpike was a long piece of road, upon which some fresh stones had just been laid, large, sharp stones over which no horse could be driven quickly without risk of danger. Over this road, with one shoe gone, I was forced to gallop at my utmost speed, my rider meanwhile cutting into me with his whip, and with wild curses urging me to go still faster. Of course my shoeless foot suffered dreadfully, the hoof was broken and split down to the quick, and the inside was terribly cut by the sharpness of the stones. This could not go on. No horse could keep his footing under such circumstances, as the pain was too great. I stumbled and fell with violence on both my knees. Smith was flung off by my fall, and, owing to the speed at which I was going, he must have fallen with great force. I soon recovered my feet and limped to the side of the road where it was free from stones. The moon had just risen above the hedge, and by its light I could see Smith lying a few yards beyond me. After making one slight effort to rise, there was a heavy groan. He did not move. I could have groaned too, for I was suffering intense pain both from my foot and knees, but horses are used to bear their pain in silence. I uttered no sound, but stood there and listened. One more heavy groan from Smith, but though he now lay in the full moonlight, I could see no motion. I could do nothing for him nor for myself, but oh, how I listened for the sound of horse, or wheels, or footsteps. The road was not much frequented, and at this time of night we might stay for hours before help came to us. I stood watching and listening. It was a calm, sweet April night. There were no sounds except a few low notes of a nightingale, and nothing moved but the white clouds near the moon, and a brown owl that flitted over the hedge. It made me think of the summer nights long ago, when I used to lie beside my mother in the green, pleasant meadow at Farmer Gray's. Chapter 26. How it ended. It must have been nearly midnight when I heard at a great distance the sound of a horse's feet. Sometimes the sound died away, then it grew clearer again and nearer. The road to Earl's Hall led through plantations that belonged to the Earl. The sound came in that direction, and I hoped it might be someone coming in search of us. As the sound came nearer and nearer, I was almost sure I could distinguish Ginger's step. A little nearer still, and I could tell she was in the dog-cart. I neighed loudly, and was overjoyed to hear an answering neigh from Ginger and men's voices. They came slowly over the stones, and stopped at the dark figure that lay upon the ground. One of the men jumped out and stooped down over it. "It is Reuben," he said, "and he does not stir." The other man followed and bent over him. "He's dead," he said. "Feel how cold his hands are." They raised him up, but there was no life, and his hair was soaked with blood. Laying him down again, they came and looked at me and saw my cut knees. "Why, the horse has been down and has thrown him. Who would have thought the black horse would have done that? Nobody thought he could fall. Reuben must have been lying there for hours. Odd, too, that the horse has not moved from the place." Robert then attempted to lead me forward. I made a step but almost fell again. "Hello! He's bad in his foot as well as his knees. Look here, his hoof is cut all to pieces. He might well come down, poor fellow." "I tell you what, Ned, I'm afraid it hasn't been all right with Reuben. Just think of him riding a horse over these stones without a shoe. Why, if he'd been in his right senses, he would have just as soon tried to ride him over the moon. I'm afraid it has been the old thing over again." Poor Susan. She looked awfully pale when she came to my house and asked if he'd come home. She made believe she was not a bit anxious and talked of a lot of things that might have kept him. But for all that, she begged me to go and meet him. But what must we do? There's the horse to get home as well as the body, and that will be no easy matter. Then followed a conversation between them, till it was agreed that Robert, the groom, should lead me, and that Ned should take the body. It was a hard job to get it into the dog-cart, for there was no one to hold Ginger. But she knew as well as I did what was going on, and stood as still as a stone. I noticed that, because if she had a fault, it was that she was impatient in standing. Ned started off very slowly, with his sad load, and Robert came and looked at my foot again, and he took his handkerchief and bound it closely round, and so led me home. I shall never forget that night walk. It was more than 3 miles. Robert led me on very slowly, and I limped and hobbled on as well as I could, suffering great pain. I'm sure he was sorry for me, for he often patted and encouraged me, talking to me in a pleasant voice. At last I reached my own box and had some corn, and after Robert had wrapped up my knees in wet cloths, he tied up my foot in a bran poultice to draw out the heat and to cleanse it before the horse doctor saw it in the morning. Then I managed to get myself down on the straw and slept in spite of the pain. The next day, after the farrier had examined my wounds, he said he hoped the joint was not injured, and if so, I should not be spoiled for work, but I should never lose the blemish. I believe they did the best to make a good cure, but it was a long and painful one. Proud flesh, as they called it, came up in my knees and was burnt out with caustic, and when at last my knees were healed, they put a blistering fluid over the front of both to bring off all the hair. They had some reason for this, and I suppose it was all right. As Smith's death had been so sudden, and no one was there to see it, there was an inquest held. The landlord and ostler at the White Lion, with several other people, gave evidence that he was intoxicated when he started from the inn, and the keeper of the toll-gate said he rode at a hard gallop through the gate, and that my shoe was picked up amongst the stones, so the case was quite plain to them, and I was cleared of all blame. Everybody pitied Susan. She was nearly out of her mind and kept saying over and over again, "Oh, he was so good, so good. It was all that cursed drink. Why will they sell that cursed drink? Oh, Reuben, Reuben." So she went on till after he was buried, and then, as she had no home or relations, she, with her 6 little children, were obliged once more to leave the pleasant home by the tall oak trees and go into that great, gloomy Union house.